We have many weather alerts that are issued throughout the country. We're breaking down what they mean because there are different levels of severity. There are advisories, watches, and warnings, and each of them are to be viewed differently. Advisories just mean be aware that conditions are starting to come together. A watch is be prepared. Let's say have your go bag ready if it's flooding or wildfire. A warning means take action. Whatever you've done in preparation, do it now. Either evacuate or head to higher ground. Whatever the warning is issued, you want to make sure that you're ready to go at that point. Breaking down a look across the country. Now, the National Weather Service is the responsible body for issuing any watch, warning, or advisory throughout the United States. In fact, it is key to their mission of protecting life and property. And that's what they consider first and foremost whenever they're going to be looking at a severe weather event or potential, even something that may seem a little bit on the lower scale of severity. If it is going to be impacting life and property, that means the National Weather Service will be taking note and determining what kind of alert they'll be issuing. The process depends on a couple of different things and the type of hazard. As you can see, there are many shades across the United States, and at any one time, there can be several alerts that are being issued. Some of them will come from a national agency like the National Hurricane Center, and others may be coming from a local office. And each of those are divided across the country, all of whom are answering to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So let's break this down here on the small size. And small in size, but they could develop quickly. The process is going to be a little bit differently than, say, a larger in size hazard. So let's just look at the small in size and developing quickly scenario. The warning process, we're going to rely on observational data. So forecasters in the local office will be looking at different types of tools, observational data, as well as Doppler radar, ground-based sensors, and those types of hazards may be something that would be severe thunderstorm or a flash flooding event. A forecaster will heavily rely on their local knowledge as well, because as we know, the topography throughout the United States and even in certain regions for that forecasting office can vary greatly. So we'd want to look at how that could play a role in the warning process. Their local knowledge may include knowledge of creeks and streams and how much capacity of water those can hold, or what's the how are those streams and creeks already faring? Are they full from a previous event, or are they dry because we haven't seen a whole lot of rain in the previous week or so? So that is going to be a small in size, develop quickly type of warning process, hazard type, as well as the local knowledge and how that plays in to issuing a watch or warning. I mentioned some of the tools that are used. This is a Doppler radar, and you can see how we've got kind of these scans going around. These are really finely tuned precision notifications and bouncing back of what kind of moisture is in the atmosphere and the severity in which is happening within the atmosphere. So they can even scan within a cloud bank, and a radar screen would bounce back and show what is actually going on in that storm, the rotation that is happening. Is there a potential tornado? Is there hail, lightning, things of that nature, which would definitely cause concern and start the process of potentially warning on a particular storm. You can see there's also snow in the Sierra that these radars can pick up. So there's a lot of different types of weather events that the radar can pick up. Again, this is a finely tuned tool that is at access to meteorologists for the warning process. Let's look at large in size, slower development. The warning process, we're relying on forecasters to use and interpret numerical weather models. So these are going to be larger in scale. They're not the microclimate type of events that we would use for a Doppler radar. These are going to scan a state, a region, the Pacific, the Atlantic. These are going to be much wider scope here. The hazard types would include things like hurricanes or winter storms or dangerous wind events that may be percolating in the background that need to be watched. So a forecaster will use a combination approach. Here's what I mean by that. They're using those computer generated outputs, but also looking at conceptual models and statistical output. What is the likelihood at that point in the season or year that this event would be taking shape, as well as what does it actually mean to the local environment? So what has been happening before that may play in to what may happen in the event that these larger scale events could be happening. One that comes to mind would be our fire danger. If a large wind event were to develop, say in the middle of winter when we've had a lot of rain, that might mean we don't need a fire weather watch. But as we head closer to the end of our dry season, soil moisture is very low, fuels are critically dry. A wind event would mean a forecaster would need to issue a fire weather watch or a red flag warning. So you can kind of see how seasons play into this as well. Here's a look at one of those models that we might use as forecasters. And again, the National Weather Service is going to be the issuing office, but forecasters at local media outlets will also use things like this to just be on the alert. Something may be issued in the coming days. This is a look at how the atmosphere is responding and forecasting how it will respond to different weather systems coming through, how the heights in the atmosphere are changing. Is the air going to be sinking and warming or rising and cooling? And that really helps us to figure out how weather systems will be playing along with the jet stream or a storm track. How is that going to be moving the storm systems around the United States and a global weather pattern as well? This is a look at our satellite and radar, which again helps forecasters to drive into another one of the tools that we'll use for those alerts. And you can see how our jet stream is favoring these low pressure systems and driving them across the United States. And that's just one of the ways that we start to get some clues as to what may be coming our way. Locally for Northern California, these are some of the ones that you might be familiar with. Winter alerts. Now, these could be issued days in advance, and it really does depend on the time of year because a weather event early in the season may be a reason to have a winter storm warning or a watch, whereas deeper in the season, that wouldn't necessarily meet the criteria. So it really does depend on the time of year. Winter weather advisory, winter storm warning, winter storm watch, and blizzard warning. Our freeze alerts. Now, these could be issued also days in advance based on the local criteria and time of year. Also, where the location is, because a temperature of 32 degrees in this era isn't necessarily going to mean a freeze warning in the middle of the winter. But for the valley or during peak growing season, a 32-degree temperature for over extended period of time is very concerning and needs to be alerted. Fog alerts. Well, we have our dense fog advisory. Now, those could be issued days or hours in advance or as warranted. Sometimes fog develops very quickly, and so those dense fog advisories may be issued with just moments' notice. Flood alerts, these are also varied. Could be issued days in advance, but it's really based on hydrologic conditions. I mentioned a moment ago that if we're looking at an event that is going to produce a heavy amount of rain, but we haven't seen a lot of rain in days past, we may not be looking at a large-scale flood event. But if the ground is saturated, our reservoirs are full, and there's a lot of snow melt coming down the hill, that means we may need a flood advisory, watch, or warning, or even a flash flood warning. Flash flood warning is usually issued with very short notice just because of a lot of rain, short period of time, and people need to seek higher ground. Our wind alerts, those are also going to be based on local criteria, could be issued days in advance. We've got the wind advisory, high wind watch, high wind warning, and extreme wind warning. And of course, that could play in greatly to our fire alerts based on local conditions and weather, fire weather watch, and red flag warning. Our heat alerts, heat is the #1 killer, weather-related killer. We've got our heat advisory, excessive heat watch, and excessive heat warning. These are really based on local criteria and time of year. A heat advisory in the Bay Area may mean those temperatures are only about 85, 90 degrees, and that wouldn't necessarily reach that threshold for the valley. But in the springtime, a 95 or 100-degree temperature certainly would be cause for concern in the Central Valley before our bodies have started to adjust to some of those extreme temperatures. So again, we have advisories: be aware, watch, be prepared, and warning: take action.